The air in Arthur and Clara's ostentatiously decorated living room, usually a space I associated with warmth and familial connection, had grown uncomfortably charged. The scent of expensive lilies, a lavish centerpiece I had sent as a congratulatory gesture for their impending wedding, now seemed to mock me with its cloying sweetness. I sat, my hands clasped tightly in my lap, the polished mahogany of the coffee table reflecting a face I barely recognized as my own. A mask of polite expectation I had worn for years, an actor in a play where my role was increasingly diminishing. The conversation had started innocently enough, a discussion of venue options and guest lists, but Clara, with her unnervingly direct gaze and a smile that never quite reached her eyes, had steered it toward an abrupt, chilling denouement. "Oh, Uncle Theodore," she'd purred, the endearment feeling like a barb. "We've decided to keep things very intimate. We actually got married yesterday. It was just a small ceremony, you know. Only the truly significant people were invited." The words, delivered with a casual cruelty, struck me with the force of a physical blow, stealing the breath from my lungs and leaving a hollow ache in my chest. Significant people. The phrase echoed, a venomous whisper in the sudden silence. Had I, Theodore Vance, a man who had dedicated 15 years of his life, since the untimely death of his wife Eleanor, to nurturing his son Arthur and ensuring the prosperity of the family business, not earned a place among the significant? I had poured not only my time and expertise, but also the very inheritance Eleanor had left us, a nest egg meant for my own comfort in my later years, into Arthurous ventures, believing I was building a legacy, a shared future. The carefully selected tie I had bought for Arthur, a deep sapphire blue I knew would complement his eyes, felt like a costume for a play I had been unceremoniously cut from. The wedding photos that began to flood my social media feed throughout the day were a slow, agonizing torture. Clara, radiant in a gown I had helped finance with a generous gift to Arthur just weeks prior. Her parents, beaming with pride, her siblings raising toasts. My absence was a glaring, undeniable void, a testament to my perceived insignificance in the life of my only son. Arthur, usually so eager to deflect any hint of disapproval, offered a weak, rehearsed excuse. "It was a spur-of-the-moment thing, Dad. Very low-key. Just us and a couple of witnesses." But the digital evidence was irrefutable, a stark betrayal etched in pixels. The silence that followed Clara's pronouncement was suffocating, broken only by the soft, almost imperceptible hum of the state-of-the-art refrigerator I had purchased for them, a final gift to a home where I was apparently not considered important enough to share in its most momentous occasion. Arthur, his gaze fixed on some point beyond my shoulder, his usual easy posture replaced by a tense rigidity, offered no defense, no explanation that could penetrate the icy wall Clara had erected. His silence was an admission, a tacit agreement with her cruel assessment of my status. Later, when I managed to gather the fragments of my composure and confront him, his response was a familiar, frustrating blend of evasion and manufactured sincerity. "It was a spur-of-the-moment thing, Dad," he repeated, his voice lacking conviction. "Very low-key. Just us and a couple of witnesses." But I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that this was a carefully crafted lie. The digital trail was already indelible. Clara's parents, their faces etched with proprietary pride, posed alongside the newlyweds. Her siblings clinked champagne glasses in a toast that excluded me. And there was Clara, resplendent in a white gown, a gown whose very fabric seemed woven from the substantial sum. I had gifted her last month for her personal expenses, money I had earmarked for a much-needed roof repair on my own aging home. I saw everything I was not supposed to see, the exclusion, the deceit, the calculated manipulation that had culminated in this profound humiliation. For years, I had navigated a minefield of unspoken expectations, carefully weighing every word, every gesture, every financial contribution, desperately seeking a crumb of genuine affection from my own son. I had strived to be the perfect father, the obliging father-in-law, the silent provider who never questioned or protested, content to be an invisible, indispensable presence. But Clara's words, significant people, had pricked a dormant nerve, awakening a realization that had been buried too long beneath layers of dutiful sacrifice. I had meticulously, if subconsciously, tallied the cost of my devotion. The rent on their apartment, which I had consistently covered for 3 years, amounted to a substantial sum. The furniture, the appliances, the countless grocery bills, the emergency loans for Arthur's ventures, the extravagant gifts for Clara S. whims. It all represented a significant portion of Eleanor S. inheritance, funds I had intended for my own security, my own peace in the twilight of my years. To have this immense generosity, this quiet love, culminate in being treated as a stranger on my son. S. wedding day was a betrayal so profound it threatened to shatter me. The following week, precisely 7 days after the wedding day humiliation, my phone rang. It was Clara, her voice a jarring departure from the confident, almost imperious tone she had adopted at the wedding. Now, it was laced with a desperate, almost pleading urgency. "Renate," she began, her voice trembling slightly, "the rent is overdue. The landlord is pressuring us, says if we don't pay this week, he'll kick us out. You forgot to make the transfer." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Forgotten? After years of unwavering, prompt, and often anticipatory financial support, had my one act of self-preservation, my quiet refusal to be insignificant, been met with such a calculated retaliation? I thought of the times I had rushed to the bank, canceling my own plans, ensuring their comfort and security. I recalled dinners of beans and rice, so that I could afford to send them money for their desires, for a vacation, for a designer handbag Clara had admired. And now, after excluding me from the most significant moment of their lives, they had the audacity to call, to demand, as if nothing had happened. A stillness, a calm that surprised even me settled within me. "Clara," I replied, my voice steady, "didn't I warn you that I only help special people?" The silence on the other end of the line was absolute, so profound that I could hear the frantic pounding of my own heart. For the first time in years, it was not I who was trembling, but she. "Renate, I don't understand," she stammered, her carefully constructed composure cracking. "We were always special to you. You're like a second mom to me." Lies, all lies, wrapped in the syrupy sweet voice she reserved solely for moments of need. The same voice that had cajoled me into financing the wedding dress, the honeymoon, the rings, expenses I had gladly borne, only to be denied witness to the vows they represented. For so long, I had lived with a constant, gnawing anxiety, a feeling of walking on eggshells, meticulously weighing every word, every gesture, every gift, hoping for a fleeting crumb of affection from my own son. I had been the perfect mother, the obliging mother-in-law, the silent provider who never complained, who absorbed their indifference like a sponge. But that phrase, "only special people," had been the spark that ignited a dormant fire within me. I calculated the total amount I had spent on them over those 3 years. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed and cried. But these were not tears of sadness, not the helpless weeping of a rejected parent. These were tears of rage, of years of accumulated frustration, of a lifetime of silently endured humiliation. I cried for every instance where my love had felt like a burden, my presence an intrusion, my money the only currency that seemed to matter. I cried for the foolish mother I had been, for the woman who had lost herself in the desperate pursuit of being indispensable to those who deemed her disposable. When I woke the next morning, something fundamental within me had shifted. It was more than the raw pain of betrayal. It was a deeper, colder resolve. I stood and met my reflection in the bathroom mirror. The same tired eyes, the same lines etched by years of unreciprocated giving. But there was something new in my gaze. a hardness, a determination that had been buried for too long beneath a veneer of compliance. I walked into the kitchen, the familiar ritual of making coffee offering a semblance of normalcy. But this time, my thoughts were not consumed by whether Arthur had slept well or if Clara had found her coveted designer handbag. My phone lay silent on the counter, its usual insistent ringing replaced by a profound, liberating quiet. I sat at the kitchen table, the very surface that had so often borne witness to my silent tears and meticulous calculations, and pulled out my checkbook and bank statements. I needed to see the numbers, to quantify the extent of my misplaced devotion. At precisely 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I decided to go for a walk. It was an impulse, a spontaneous act of self-care that had been absent from my life for years, always sidelined by Arthur and Clara's ever-present needs. My walks had always been purposeful: a hurried trip to the bank for automatic transfers, a stop at the supermarket to pick up an item Clara had forgotten, a detour to the pharmacy for medication Arthur claimed was vital. Today, however, there was no agenda, no obligation, only the simple desire to move my legs, to feel the pavement beneath my feet without the weight of expectation. I found myself wandering past the park where I had once pushed Arthur on swings, his childish laughter echoing in my memory. Where had that boy gone? When had he transformed into a man who saw me not as a mother, but as a walking, talking ATM? When had I begun to confuse love with financial transactions, believing that my son's affection was something I had to buy? My path meandered towards the bank, a place of countless transactions, each one chipping away at my own financial security. Mr. Thorne, the branch manager, a man who had known me for years and processed every one of my transfers to Arthur and Clara, waved through the glass. He had witnessed my account dwindle month after month, a silent spectator to my misguided generosity. Drawn by an unseen force, I walked directly to his office. "Mr. Thorne," I began, my voice surprisingly steady, "I need to cancel all automatic transfers and revoke any access my son and daughter-in-law have to my accounts. I want to protect my assets." He looked at me, his brow furrowed with concern. "Are you sure, Mrs. Peterson? Has something happened?" His genuine inquiry, a flicker of humanity in the midst of my financial entanglement, was more heartfelt than any question Arthur had posed in recent months. "What has happened?" I replied, a quiet conviction settling within me, "is that I've finally opened my eyes. I want to cancel everything, and I also want information on how to protect my accounts. I don't want anyone else to have access to my money." While Mr. Thorne processed the cancellations, my phone buzzed relentlessly. Max, Clara, Max again. It was as if they had developed a sixth sense, an instinct for detecting when their financial lifeline was in danger. I turned the phone off completely, the silence a welcome balm. "Mrs. Peterson," Mr. Thorne said as he handed me the finalized papers, "I apologize for intruding, but in all these years, I have seen you be very generous with your family. I hope you are not being pressured to make these changes." His words touched me deeply. This man, who barely knew me beyond my banking transactions, showed more genuine concern for my well-being than my own son. "I'm not being pressured, Mr. Thorne. On the contrary, I have finally stopped pressuring myself." When I left the bank, I felt an almost physical lightness, as if I had deposited an enormous burden within those walls. For the first time in years, my money was entirely mine, with no financial obligations to people who saw me as a resource rather than a person. I walked home, contemplating all the things I had forgone to please Arthur and Clara, the trips I hadn't taken, the friends I had drifted away from, the hobbies I had abandoned, all because every dollar I spent on myself was a dollar less for their needs. As I approached my house, the sight of 3 cars parked in front, Arthur's, Clara's, and an unfamiliar one, sent a cold dread through me. They had keys. I had given them keys, trusting them implicitly, believing they would one day care for me as I had cared for them, Taking a deep, fortifying breath, I opened the door. It was time for the first real confrontation of my new life. The scene that greeted me was one I would never forget. Arthur sat slumped on my sofa, his head buried in his hands. Clara paced the room like a caged animal, her energy frantic. And an older man, whom I didn't recognize, was rifling through papers on my dining table. My papers, my personal documents. "What is happening here?" I demanded, my voice ringing with an unexpected loudness. All three heads snapped up, their expressions a mixture of shock and something akin to resentment, as if I were the intruder in my own home. Clara was the first to speak, her voice laced with the desperate urgency I had heard on the phone. "Renate, thank God you're here. We need to talk. Mr. Finch is from the law firm we consulted about your situation." My situation? The question escaped my lips with a calm that surprised me. "What situation? I'm doing perfectly fine." Arthur finally lifted his head, his eyes, once the clear blue of a trusting child, now reflecting only financial panic. "Mom, we went to the bank, and they told us you canceled all the transfers. Mr. Thorne explained that you also blocked our access to your accounts. We don't understand why you did that." Mr. Finch, a man in his 50s with a slick suit and a smile that inspired no confidence, approached me, an outstretched hand extended. "Mrs. Peterson, I am Dr. Finch, a family law attorney. Your children are concerned about your mental well-being and have asked me to assess the situation." I did not take his hand. Instead, I walked directly to the dining table and gathered my documents from his grasp. "These are my private papers," I stated firmly. "You have no right to look at them without my consent." "Mom," Arthur interjected, his tone laced with the condescension he had perfected over the years. "We're worried about you. Your behavior has been very strange lately. First, you financially cut us off without explanation. Then, you don't answer our calls. We think you might need professional help." Clara moved towards me, her touch falsely tender, the same touch she employed when she needed something. "Renate, honey, we know you're under a lot of stress. Maybe the loneliness is affecting you more than you think. At your age, episodes of confusion are normal." Confusion. The word struck me like an alarm bell. Now I understood their strategy. It wasn't about helping me. It was about declaring me mentally incompetent, about seizing control of my finances. The same woman who had declared me not significant was now attempting to infantilize me, to treat me as a senile old lady. "I'm not confused," I declared, my voice firm enough to silence them all. "I am clearer than I have been in years, and you are all going to leave my house right now." Dr. Finch interjected, his voice the practiced, reasonable tone of a lawyer trying to de-escalate. "Mrs. Peterson, I understand you feel overwhelmed, but your children have a right to intervene if they believe your ability to make financial decisions is impaired. They have documented several concerning behaviors." Concerning behaviors. A dry, humorless laugh escaped my throat. "Like what? Deciding that my money belongs to me? Deciding to no longer finance the lives of two adults who treat me like trash?" Clara leaped up as if I had struck her. "We never treated you badly. You are part of our family. Everything you have will belong to us one day anyway. We are just speeding up the process." There it was, the naked, unvarnished truth. Everything I possessed would, in their minds, eventually be theirs. I was already dead, a temporary obstacle between them and their inheritance. It mattered not if I had 70 years or 70 days left. I was simply an ATM with legs that had become problematic. "Out," I commanded, pointing towards the door. "All three of you, get out of my house." Arthur stood, his childlike pout of frustration returning. "Mom, we can't just leave. We have obligations, the rent, the car payments, the credit card you co-signed for. You can't just cut us off overnight." "I can." My voice rose, a force I hadn't unleashed in years. "For years, I have paid rent that wasn't even in my name. I filled a refrigerator in a house where I was not welcome. I financed a life that clearly had no place for me. Dr. Finch placed a folder on the table. Mrs. Peterson, we have prepared some documents that could facilitate this transition. A power of attorney that would allow Max and Lena to manage your finances more efficiently. This would just be temporary until you feel better. I took the folder and, without opening it, tossed it directly into the trash can. The only transition that is going to happen here is yours to the front door. Clara began to cry, but they were not tears of remorse. They were tears of frustration, of contained rage. You can't do this to us, Renate. We were counting on you. We made plans based on your support. We bought things. We took on financial obligations because we knew we could count on you. Obligations based on my money, I retorted, my voice dangerously calm. Not on my well-being, not on my happiness, not on my company, just on my money. And now that I have decided that my money is better used in my own life, I am suddenly a confused old woman who needs legal guardianship. Arthur attempted to approach me, but I stepped back, his proximity now an invasion. He was no longer the boy who ran into my arms during thunderstorms. He was a 35-year-old man who saw his mother as an impediment to a comfortable, unearned life. Mom, we made mistakes, he said, his voice attempting a remorseful tone. The wedding was a misunderstanding. Clara was nervous. I was under pressure. We can fix this if you just become reasonable again. Reasonable? The word tasted bitter in my mouth. Being reasonable meant continuing to pay for their lives while they treated me like a stranger, pretending that the sting of exclusion from my only son's wedding didn't hurt. Dr. Finch gathered his papers with practiced efficiency. Mrs. Peterson, this is not over. Your family has legal options. If you are indeed making irrational decisions due to mental health problems, a judge can determine that you need guardianship. His words, delivered with cold professionalism, were a stark realization of the depth of their depravity. This was not merely a manipulative family visit. It was a genuine legal threat. They intended to strip me of my autonomy, to control my life through legal decree. Mr. Finch, I said, meeting his gaze directly, I suggest you do your research thoroughly before you threaten a 71-year-old woman who has managed her finances flawlessly for 40 years, who raised her son alone after the death of her husband, who ran a household and worked honorably until retirement, and who, until last week, financially supported 2 completely capable adults. Clara stopped crying, her face hardening into a mask of cold fury. This won't stay like this, Renate. We have rights and lawyers, too. Perfect, I replied, a flicker of grim satisfaction. Hire all the lawyers you want, with your own money, of course, because mine is no longer available to finance your legal tantrums. The 3 of them walked towards the door, their wounded dignity palpable, the accustomed ease of their entitlement shattered. Before he left, Arthur turned back, a parting shot delivered with chilling conviction. Mom, this is going to end very badly for you. You're going to end up alone with no one to take care of you when you really need it. Arthur, I said, a deep sadness mingling with crystalline clarity. I am already alone. The difference is that now it is by my own choice, not by your neglect. As I closed the door behind them, I stood in my living room, enveloped by the most beautiful silence I had heard in years. It was the silence of freedom. That night, sleep eluded me, not from sadness or regret, but from the exhilarating adrenaline of having reclaimed control of my life. I lay awake, plotting my next steps like a general preparing for battle. If Arthur and Clara wanted a fight, I would give them one, but it would be a war waged with intelligence, not with emotion. At 6 o'clock the next morning, I was dressed and ready. My first stop was the office of Mr. Henderson, an attorney I had consulted years prior when finalizing Eleanor's estate. Unlike the slick Dr. Finch, Mr. Henderson possessed an impeccable reputation, specializing in the rights of the elderly, his demeanor calm and reassuring. Mrs. Peterson, he began as I laid out the situation, What your children attempted yesterday is a form of elder financial abuse, a federal crime. Their unauthorized entry into your home and their review of your private documents also constitute clear violations." His words were a double-edged sword. They calmed me by validating my experience, confirming that I was not imagining the abuse, yet they worried me with the stark reality of the legal battle ahead. "We must document everything," Mr. Henderson continued, his gaze steady. "Every transfer, every gift, every instance of pressure. We will also change your will to safeguard your assets from future manipulation." We spent the next 3 hours meticulously reviewing my financial records. Mr. Henderson whistled softly as he tallied the sum. $33,400 in 3 years, Mrs. Peterson. With this amount, you could have lived comfortably, traveled, and enjoyed your retirement. Instead, you completely financed the lives of 2 adults who didn't even respect you enough to invite you to their wedding. Leaving his office, armed with a comprehensive plan, I felt a surge of purpose. My immediate steps: change all the locks on my house, install a complete security system with cameras, and open a new bank account at a different institution, one where Arthur and Clara had no prior knowledge or access. My next stop was the hardware store, a place I frequented for the myriad repairs I undertook at Arthur and Clara's apartment. Mr. Summers, the owner, greeted me with a familiar, knowing smile. "Mrs. Peterson, another emergency with your son?" he asked, accustomed to my role as the silent problem solver. "No, Mr. Summers. This time it's for my own house. I need to change all the locks, and I want the best quality available." He looked surprised but asked no questions. As I was selecting the locks, his son, Ethan, who specialized in security systems, approached. Providence, it seemed, was at work. "Ethan," I said, "I also need to install a complete surveillance camera system. Price is not an issue." While they prepared the installation for the following day, my phone rang from an unknown number. It was Clara, calling from a borrowed phone, her number blocked after our last confrontation. "Renate, it's Clara. Please don't hang up. We need to talk like civilized adults." "Speak," I replied dryly. "Listen, I understand you're upset about the wedding. It was a mistake. Max and I have talked about it, and we want to make it up to you. How about we have a special dinner to celebrate our wedding with you? We can do it at your house, cook together like we used to." The sheer audacity of the manipulation was almost laughable. "Clara, how much rent do you owe exactly?" The silence on the other end confirmed I had struck a nerve. Well, it's 2 months, $1,000 total. But I'm not just calling for that, Renate. We really miss you in our lives." "Do you miss me or my money?" I asked directly. "Both," she admitted with surprising honesty. "Renate, I won't lie to you. Yes, we need your financial help, but we love you too. You're important to us." "If I'm so important," I countered, "why wasn't I important enough to be at your wedding? Why am I not important enough to receive a call that doesn't involve a request for money? When was the last time you called me just to ask how I was doing?" Another silence. We both knew the answer. Never. "Clara, I'm only going to explain this to you once. For 3 years, you have treated me like an ATM with feelings. You used me. You ignored me. You humiliated me. And finally, you insulted me in the worst possible way. Now that the money is running out, you suddenly discover you love me." "Renate, please." I cut her off. "There is no please. You made your choice when you decided I wasn't too special enough to be at your wedding. Now I'm making mine." I hung up and turned off my phone completely. I wouldn't allow any more interruptions on my day of liberation. That afternoon, I indulged in a visit to the beauty salon, a luxury I hadn't afforded myself in over a year, always canceling appointments due to Arthur or Clara's sudden emergencies. Cynthia, my favorite stylist, greeted me with a warm smile. "Mrs. Peterson, what a surprise. I thought you'd forgotten about us." "I didn't forget you, Cynthia," I replied. "I just forgot that I also deserve to be pampered." I treated myself to the full works, A cut, color, manicure, pedicure. For the first time in years, I spent money on myself without a shred of guilt. As Cynthia worked on my hair, she shared stories of her life, her children, her dreams, a refreshing conversation that didn't revolve around the needs of others. "You look beautiful, Mrs. Peterson," she said when she was finished. "But more than that, you look free. Did something good happen?" "Yes, Cynthia," I smiled, the truth settling deep within me. I finally learned to say no. When I returned home that afternoon, another unfamiliar car was parked in front of my house. My heart leaped, momentarily fearing Arthur and Clara had returned with reinforcements. But as I approached, I saw an older woman sitting on my porch steps. "Mrs. Peterson?" she asked as I stepped out of my car. "Yes, that's me. Can I help you?" "I'm Eleanor Albright. I live next door." "We've been neighbors for years, but we've never really had a chance to talk. Yesterday, I heard some very loud voices in your house, and I got worried. Is everything okay?" Her sincere concern touched me deeply. A stranger showing more interest in my well-being than my own son. "Please, come in, Mrs. Albright. I'll make you some coffee, and I'll tell you a story you won't believe." As I brewed the coffee, I recounted the entire saga. Eleanor listened intently, nodding occasionally, her eyes filling with tears as I finished. "Mrs. Peterson," she said, her voice gentle but firm, "you did the right thing. I went through something similar with my daughter 5 years ago. I also thought it was my duty to finance her adult life. I also believed they wouldn't love me if I didn't give them money." "What happened?" I asked, eager to hear her experience. "I cut off the money when I realized they only called me when they needed something. At first it was terrible. They threatened me, emotionally blackmailed me, tried to make me feel guilty. But after 6 months, my daughter called to genuinely apologize. Now we have a real relationship based on love, not on money." Her words offered a profound sense of hope and validation. "Do you think Arthur and Clara will understand one day?" I asked, a wistful note in my voice. "Maybe yes, maybe no," she replied honestly. "But that's no longer your responsibility, Mrs. Peterson. Your responsibility now is to live your own life." That night, for the first time in 3 years, I went to bed without worrying about Arthur and Clara's rent, their food, their whims. I went to bed thinking about myself, my plans, my future, and I slept more soundly than I had in years. The next morning, Ethan and Mr. Summers arrived promptly at 8 a.m. to install the new locks and the security system. My phone, meanwhile, continued its relentless barrage of calls from unknown numbers. Clara was still trying to reach me, but I had developed a new skill, the art of strategic ignorance. "Mrs. Peterson," Ethan said as he installed the final camera, "this system will give you absolute peace of mind. You can see from your phone who is coming to your house, even when you're not here. And if someone tries to break in without permission, an alert is automatically sent to the police." The irony was not lost on me, installing a security system to protect myself from my own son. Yet the sting of it was less potent now. It was simply a practical measure to preserve my newfound tranquility. While they worked, I decided to do something I had postponed for years: call my sister Diana in Chicago. Our conversations had, in recent years, devolved into financial reports disguised as family news. Me boasting about my generosity, her listening with a quiet concern I had always dismissed. "Renate," Diana answered, her voice filled with surprise. "Sister, how are you? We haven't spoken in months." "I'm good, Diana. Better than good. I'm calling to tell you that I've finally come to my senses." I recounted the entire story, from the secret wedding to the lawyer's visit, to my decision to cut off their financial support. Diana listened in silence. When I finished, her response was unexpected. "Renate, sister, it was about time. Every time we spoke, it broke my heart to hear you brag about how much money you gave them, as if love could be measured in dollars. I wanted to tell you something, but I didn't know how." "What did you want to tell me?" I asked. Max never spoke lovingly about you when I saw him at family gatherings. It was always, "My mom helped me with this," or "My mom bought me that," but never, "I miss my mom," or "I love my mom." It was as if you were a service provider, not a person. Her words, though painful, were like a necessary antiseptic on an infected wound. "You know what else I noticed?" Diana continued. "Clara always spoke about you in the future tense. When Renate is no longer here, we can remodel her house. Or when we inherit, we will invest in the business. As if they were waiting for you to die to really live." This revelation struck me with the force of a physical blow. They didn't just see me as an ATM. They saw me as a temporary obstacle between them and their inheritance. While I had been desperately trying to buy their affection, they had been planning their future without me. Sitting in my kitchen that afternoon, processing this devastating information, I felt a profound sense of grief for the years lost, for the son I thought I knew, and for the illusion of a loving family. That evening, Eleanor arrived with a surprise. She had invited friends from her garden club, Cynthia from the salon, Maria, Carmen, and Alfreda, all women who, like Eleanor, had navigated similar betrayals. As we shared stories, a powerful sense of sisterhood emerged. Maria spoke of setting boundaries with a brother who constantly demanded financial aid. Carmen recounted cutting off contact with a daughter who only visited when she needed money. Alfreda, a woman of immense wisdom at 80, had revised her will after discovering her grandchildren viewed her as their retirement plan. "What hurts me the most," I confessed, my voice thick with emotion, "is not losing the money I gave them, but realizing that I never truly had the love I thought I did." "Renate, my dear," Alfreda said, her eyes full of compassion, "true love cannot be bought or sold. If you had to pay for it, it was never real." Her words were a balm to my wounded soul. She was right. I had bought attention, not love. I had financed an illusion. "You know what I've discovered?" I said to my new friends, a genuine smile finally gracing my lips. "Loneliness surrounded by people who don't love you is far worse than being truly alone. At least now, when I am alone, I am in good company." We raised our glasses, a toast to our shared wisdom, our hard-won liberation. That night, for the first time in weeks, I slept soundly, the weight of unspoken burdens lifted. The next day, Ethan and Mr. Summers installed the new locks in the security system. While they worked, my phone continued its silent protest, Clara's calls from various numbers a testament to her persistent yet futile attempts to breach my defenses. "Mrs. Peterson," Ethan assured me as he finished, "this system will give you absolute peace of mind. You can monitor your property remotely, and any unauthorized entry will trigger an alert to the authorities." The irony was not lost on me, but the fear had been replaced by a quiet resolve. My peace was now secured. While they worked, I made another call, one I had postponed for years, to my sister Diana. We spoke for hours, my voice filled with a newfound clarity as I recounted the full extent of Arthur and Clara's manipulations. Diana listened, her initial surprise giving way to a quiet understanding. "Renate," she finally said, her voice laced with relief. "It was about time. Every time we spoke, it broke my heart to hear you speak of them, as if their need for your money was a measure of their love. Max never spoke of you with love, Renate. It was always about what you provided, not about your presence, your company, your care. It was as if you were a service provider, not a mother." Her words, though painful, were a confirmation, a necessary truth that cleared away the last vestiges of my self-deception. That afternoon, Eleanor invited me over for dinner. Her daughter, Sarah, was visiting, and in their company, I witnessed the living embodiment of a healthy family relationship. They spoke with respect, asked genuine questions about each other's lives, and laughed freely, their interactions a stark contrast to the strained, transactional dynamic I had endured with Arthur. Sarah, a successful professional in her own right, never once asked for money. her presence a testament to a bond built on love, not obligation. I wanted that with Arthur, too, I confessed to Eleanor later, a hint of lingering sadness in my voice. And perhaps you will have it one day, she replied gently. But first, he has to learn that you are a person who deserves respect, not just a source of income. The following days brought a strange, almost surreal peace. The security cameras showed Arthur and Clara's car driving past my house multiple times a day, sometimes slowly, sometimes parking for a few minutes, as if surveilling my routine, searching for an opportune moment. Mr. Henderson had advised me to document every instance, assuring me that their persistence would only strengthen our case for a permanent restraining order. On Friday morning, as I calmly enjoyed my coffee and the morning paper, the doorbell rang. The cameras revealed a well-dressed young woman with a folder and a professional smile. "Good morning, Mrs. Peterson," she said as I opened the door. "I am Mrs. Davies, a social investigator from the Office of Senior Services. We have received a report that you may be in a crisis situation, and we need to conduct a wellness check." My blood ran cold. Arthur and Clara had escalated their tactics, involving external agencies. "May I see your ID?" I asked, my voice betraying none of the panic rising within me. She presented a genuine-looking ID. "Mrs. Davies, I would like to call my lawyer before answering any questions." "Ma'am, this is not a legal interrogation. It's a wellness check. If you have nothing to hide, it should not be a problem to speak with me." The phrase, "nothing to hide," ignited my ire. The same logic abusers use to justify their invasions of privacy. "Miss Davies, I am calling my lawyer. You can wait here or come back another day, but I will not answer any questions without legal representation present." Mr. Henderson arrived within 20 minutes. Seeing the social worker, his expression hardened. "Miss Davies," he stated, after verifying her credentials, "I hope you have a court order to be here because my client is under my legal representation, and any unauthorized investigation constitutes harassment." "Sir," Mrs. Davies replied, her confidence waning, "we have reports from concerned family members about the lady's well-being. It's our duty to investigate." "What family?" Mr. Henderson asked dryly. "The same family that tried to have her sign a power of attorney without representation. The same family that broke into her house without permission and reviewed her private documents. The same family that excluded her from important events while living off her money." Mr. Henderson placed a folder on the table. "Here is complete documentation of my client's financial and emotional abuse. $33,400 withdrawn from her accounts in 3 years. Systematic social exclusion and emotional blackmail. If someone needs to be investigated here, it is not my client." Mrs. Davies reviewed the documents, her discomfort growing. The information she had received was clearly not aligning with the reality she was now facing. "Mrs. Peterson," she asked after a moment, "can you explain to me why you so abruptly stopped financial support for your son?" "Because I finally discovered they were using me," I replied simply. "Because I realized that to them, I wasn't a mother, but a bank account. Because I was tired of financing the lives of people who saw me as an obstacle." "But don't you feel it's your responsibility to help your family?" The question outraged me. "Miss Davies, my responsibility as a mother was to raise my son until he was 18, to educate him, and to give him the tools to be an independent adult. My son is 35 years old, married, and perfectly capable of supporting himself. Financing his adult life is not my responsibility. It is my choice, and I have chosen not to do so anymore." Mr. Henderson interjected, "Miss Davies, would you consider it normal for a 35-year-old adult to be unable to pay his own rent without the help of his 71-year-old mother?" Mrs. Davies did not answer immediately. I could see she was reevaluating the entire situation. "Mrs. Peterson," she asked after a pause, "do you manage your own finances completely? I can show you my bank statements, my investments, my tax payments. Everything is current and in order. Do you live independently?" "As you can see, I keep my house clean. I take care of myself physically. I drive my own car. I have healthy social relationships with my neighbors. Do you take any medication? Just vitamins and occasionally aspirin. I don't have any medical conditions that require medication. Mr. Henderson added, My client has just undergone extensive medical exams as part of our legal process. She is in perfect mental and physical condition. Mrs. Davies closed her folder. Mrs. Peterson, based on this conversation and the documentation I have reviewed, I see no indication that you are at risk or in need of intervention. I will close this case. After she left, Mr. Henderson and I remained in silence for a few minutes. Renate, he said finally, this is going to continue to escalate. Max and Clara are spending money they don't have to hire professionals to try to have you declared incompetent. Does that mean they are desperate? It means exactly that. What else can they do? They can file a lawsuit for incompetence. It's expensive and hard to win. But if they find a sympathetic judge and a psychiatrist willing to testify in their favor, they could get a guardian assigned. The thought terrified me. They could seize control of my money. They could try, he reassured me, but we have solid evidence that you are completely competent and that they are motivated by greed, not by genuine concern. That afternoon, I called Diana to vent. Sister, she said after hearing my story, do you notice how far they are willing to go for money? They are risking family relationships, spending money on lawyers and doctors, destroying their own reputation, all to get access to your bank account again. Her words struck a chord. Max and Clara had revealed their true nature. There was no going back, no possibility of genuine reconciliation. To them, I had never been a mother or a respected mother-in-law. I had always just been money on legs. This revelation, though painful, was liberating. I no longer had to question my decision. I no longer had to feel guilty for protecting myself. They had proven, unequivocally, that my emotional and physical well-being was less important to them than my money. That evening, Eleanor came to visit with a surprise, her friends from the garden club. Renate, she introduced them. These are my friends Cynthia, who you already know from the salon, Maria, Carmen, and Alfreda. We have all been through similar situations with abusive family members. We spent the evening sharing stories, a tapestry of shared pain and newfound strength. Maria had navigated similar financial demands from a brother. Carmen had cut ties with a daughter whose visits were transactional. Alfreda had revised her will after discovering her grandchildren saw her as their retirement plan. What hurts me the most, I confessed, is not losing the money I gave them, but realizing that I never had the love I thought I did. Renate, my dear, Alfreda said, her eyes wise with 80 years of life. True love cannot be bought or sold. If you had to pay for it, it was never real. Her words were a salve to my wounded soul. She was right. I had bought attention, not love. I had financed an illusion. You know what I've discovered? I said to my new friends, a genuine smile finally gracing my lips. Loneliness surrounded by people who don't love you is far worse than being truly alone. At least now, when I am alone, I am in good company. We laughed, a shared cathartic sound, and raised our glasses to our newfound wisdom. That night, after my new friends had departed, I sat in my garden, lost in thought. The stars seemed to shine brighter, or perhaps I was seeing them with clearer eyes. For the first time in my adult life, I was financially independent. I had no obligations, no dependencies, save for myself. And instead of fear, this reality filled me with an exhilarating excitement. I could travel when I wished, remodel my home, buy myself beautiful clothes, contribute to causes that mattered to me, invest in my own future instead of financing the present of ungrateful people. Freedom tasted like hope. And for the first time in years, I dared to plan my future. A month after the social worker's visit, I believed the war was won. I had settled into a comfortable routine, calm mornings with coffee and the newspaper, tending to my garden, lunches with Eleanor or my new friends, and afternoons devoted to activities I had long abandoned. I had returned to painting, a passion that had been dormant since Arthur and Clara's needs had overshadowed my own life. But on a Thursday morning, as I was sketching flowers on a new easel, Mr. Henderson arrived, his face grim, sending a chill down my spine. "Renate, we need to talk. Arthur and Clara have filed a formal lawsuit for mental incompetence in family court. They are requesting to have a legal guardian assigned to you." The words fell like stones. I knew it was a possibility, but hearing it articulated made it terrifyingly real. Does that mean they can take control of my money? If a judge determines that you are unable to manage your affairs, yes, he could place Arthur as your legal guardian, which would give him full control over your finances. I sank onto my sofa, the weight of this latest, deepest betrayal crushing me. My own son was attempting to legally declare me incompetent to steal my inheritance. Mr. Henderson, what evidence could they possibly have? You yourself have seen that I am completely competent. They have statements from 3 witnesses claiming you have behaved erratically. They have also submitted unpaid doctor's bills that you supposedly didn't pay, and medications that you supposedly hoarded without taking them. But that was a lie. I had no outstanding doctor's bills, no hoarded medications. "I know, Renate," he continued, "but they have fabricated convincing evidence. They also have the statement from Dr. Lehman, who states that you refuse to cooperate with a psychiatric evaluation, which they interpret as proof of mental decline. The manipulation was diabolical. They had twisted my refusal to undergo an unnecessary examination into proof of mental illness. They had used my instinct to protect myself as evidence that I needed protection." "Who are the 3 witnesses?" Mr. Henderson consulted his documents. "Clara, of course. A neighbor named Mr. Davies, and someone who claims to be your pharmacist, Mr. Green. Mr. Davies was the unpleasant neighbor across the street who had always had issues with me. Mr. Green was indeed my pharmacist, but I couldn't fathom why he would betray me." "I need to speak to Mr. Green," I told Mr. Henderson. "Something is not right." We went to the pharmacy that afternoon. Mr. Green received me with visible surprise and nervousness. "Mrs. Peterson, it's good to see you." "How are you, Mr. Green? I was told you signed a statement saying I show erratic behavior with my medications." His face flushed crimson. "Mrs. Peterson, your daughter-in-law came in a few weeks ago and asked about your medications. She said she was worried because you were acting strangely. And what did you tell her?" "I explained to her that you only buy vitamins and occasional aspirin, that you don't have any regular medical prescriptions. But she insisted that this was proof that you were not taking adequate care of your health." Mr. Henderson interjected. "Mr. Green, did you sign a paper?" She brought a document that said I was confirming that Mrs. Peterson had irregular medication purchases. I thought it was for her health insurance or something. I didn't know it was for a lawsuit. My own pharmacist had been tricked into signing something he didn't fully understand. Clara's manipulation knew no bounds. "Mr. Green," I said, my voice firm, "I need you to write a statement explaining exactly what happened and clarifying that I have no problems with medications." "Of course, Mrs. Peterson, I am terribly sorry for this misunderstanding." After the pharmacy, we went to confront Mr. Davies. He greeted us with obvious hostility. "What do you want, Mr. Davies?" Mr. Henderson asked. "I understand you signed a statement about my client's behavior." "And you're right, I did. That woman is crazy. She's been acting strange for weeks." "Can you be more specific about the behaviors you observed?" "Installing cameras as if she lived in a war zone. Having strangers visit all the time, yelling at her family in the street. I realized Mr. Davies had taken everything out of context. The cameras were for protection. The strangers were my new friends. The yelling was me defending my home from Arthur and Clara's invasions." "Mr. Davies," I said, "do you know why I installed the cameras?" "No, and I don't care." "To protect myself from my son and daughter-in-law who broke into my house without permission and threatened me." "That's what a crazy person would say," he retorted cruelly. There was no reasoning with him. His statement was based on superficial observations, maliciously interpreted. That evening, Mr. Henderson and I sat down to plan our defense. Renate, we need our own psychiatric evaluation. I have a colleague, Dr. Moore, who is an expert in assessing mental capacity. She can officially confirm that you are completely competent. What if Arthur and Clara have bribed the judge? What if none of this matters because they have already decided to declare me incompetent? Renate, the legal system is not perfect, but it's not completely corrupt either. We have solid evidence of your mental competence and their financial motivations. We are going to fight this. The next day, I went to my appointment with Dr. Moore. She was a woman in her 50s with kind but astute eyes. Mrs. Peterson, I am going to ask you a series of questions and tests to assess your mental capacity. Take your time and answer honestly. For 2 hours, she asked me questions about my memory, my reasoning ability, my financial understanding, my emotional health. She also administered cognitive tests and asked me to solve mathematical and logical problems. Mrs. Peterson, she said at the end, your results are well above average for your age. You are not only mentally competent, but your cognitive function is excellent. Doctor, why do you think my family is doing this? Based on what you've told me and the documents I've reviewed, this seems to be a classic case of elder financial exploitation. Unfortunately, it's more common than people think. I left the consultation feeling validated, but also saddened. The professional confirmation of my mental health was a relief, but it also confirmed that the lawsuit was real and necessary. That afternoon, Eleanor organized an emergency meeting with all our friends from the garden club. When I told them about the incompetence lawsuit, everyone was outraged. "Renate!" Maria exclaimed. "We will testify in your favor. We have been with you for weeks, and anyone can see that you are doing great." "Better than great," Cynthia added. "You are clearer and stronger than many 40-year-old women I know." Alfreda, with her 80-year-old wisdom, took my hands. "Renate, my dear, what your children are doing is nothing new. For generations, greedy children have tried to declare their parents insane to get their money. But you have something many of these victims didn't have: documentation, legal support, and friends who can testify for you." Her words gave me hope. I was not alone in this fight. I had an army of strong women who had witnessed my transformation firsthand. "You know what the saddest thing about all this is?" I said. "That Arthur and Clara are willing to destroy any future possibility of reconciliation for money. Even if I were willing to forgive everything so far, there's no going back from this." "And maybe that's for the best," Cynthia replied. "At least now you know exactly who they are and you can act accordingly." That night, for the first time since this nightmare began, I truly cried. Not out of sadness, but out of grief. I was saying my final goodbye to the son I thought I had, to the dream of a loving family, to the illusion that unconditional love was reciprocated. But something new also emerged within me. An iron determination not to let myself be stripped not only of my money, but also of my dignity and my freedom. The war had officially begun, but I was ready to fight. The trial commenced 3 weeks later. I woke early, dressed in my best black suit, and looked at myself in the mirror with a determination I had never felt before. Today, not only my mental capacity would be judged, but my dignity as a person, my right to live free from abuse, my value beyond my bank account would be assessed. Mr. Henderson arrived at 7 a.m. to go over our strategy one last time. "Renate, remember, the burden of proof is on them. They have to prove that you are incompetent. We just have to show that you are not. And what if the judge is already biased? Judge Sterling has a reputation for being fair. I researched his past cases. He doesn't automatically favor families. He is dedicated to protecting the rights of the elderly." We arrived at the courthouse at 9 a.m. In the hallway, I saw Arthur in a new suit, likely purchased for the occasion, and Clara, dressed in black as if attending a funeral. Perhaps it was the funeral of our family relationship. When our eyes met, Arthur avoided my gaze, but Clara held mine with a coldness that confirmed her perspective. This was a business transaction. Their lawyer, an elegant older man with the confidence of someone who had won similar cases, began his opening statement. His strategy was clear. Portray me as a confused old woman, manipulated by strangers to alienate me from my loving family. Your Honor, he intoned solemnly, Mrs. Renate Peterson has shown a clear mental decline in recent months. She has cut off all financial support for her family without a rational explanation. She has installed unnecessary security systems due to paranoia and has isolated herself from her loved ones under the influence of neighbors and lawyers who are obviously taking advantage of her vulnerable situation. Every word was carefully chosen to frame my self-empowerment as dementia and my freedom as external manipulation. Then they called their witnesses. Clara testified first, her performance Oscar-worthy. She cried as she described my supposed complete change, my hostility, my paranoia, my isolation from a loving family. Your Honor, she declared in a trembling voice, Renate has always been like a second mom to me. Seeing her mental decline has been devastating. We just want to help her get the care she needs. Lies, wrapped in convincing tears. When Mr. Henderson cross-examined her, the cracks in her narrative began to show. Mrs. Schuster, he inquired, can you tell the court when was the last time you called my client without asking for money? Clara stammered, well, we always talked about many things. Can you give me a specific date? I don't remember exact dates. Is it true that you and your husband got married without inviting my client? It was a very small ceremony. Is it true that when my client asked about the wedding, you told her that you had only invited special people? Clara's face turned red. Those words were taken out of context. What would be the right context, Mr. Henderson pressed, to tell your mother-in-law that she is not a special person? She couldn't answer convincingly. Arthur was next. Seeing him on the witness stand, swearing to tell the truth while preparing to lie about my mental health, was one of the most painful moments of my life. This was the boy I had raised alone, the one to whom I had dedicated my entire existence. My mom has always been very generous with us, he testified. But lately she has become erratic and irrational. We believe she is being manipulated by people who are taking advantage of her. When Mr. Henderson cross-examined him, the mask completely fell. Mr. Peterson, how much money have you received from your mother in the last 3 years? I don't know the exact amount. Does $33,400 sound about right? Maybe she's always been generous. And how many times have you visited your mother without asking her for money? The silence was deafening. Is it true that you and your wife broke into my client's house without permission and checked her private documents? We were worried about her. Is it true that you brought a lawyer to pressure her into signing a power of attorney? We wanted to help her manage her finances. Do you, at 35 years old, need the help of your 71-year-old mother to pay your rent? Arthur could not answer with dignity. Mr. Davies testified about my supposed erratic behaviors, but when Mr. Henderson questioned him for details, he admitted he had never spoken to me directly and that all his information was based on superficial observations. Doctor, Lehman testified that my refusal to undergo an evaluation was proof of mental decline. But Mr. Henderson submitted the documentation of our independent evaluation with Dr. Moore, which completely refuted his conclusions. Then it was our turn. Mr. Henderson first called Mr. Green, my pharmacist, who explained how he had been tricked into signing a statement that distorted my medication buying habits. Dr. Moore testified about my excellent mental state and presented the results of the cognitive tests, which had been flawless. Mr. Summers from the hardware store testified about my mental competence, explaining that my decisions to cancel automatic transfers were completely rational and had been processed correctly. Eleanor and my friends from the garden club testified about my clarity, my newfound vitality, and my ability to maintain healthy social relationships. Finally, It was my turn. I stood with dignity and walked to the witness stand, feeling the weight of 71 years of experience, of wisdom gained through pain, of strength discovered in adversity. Mr. Henderson guided me through my testimony, allowing me to tell my story. The $33,400 spent over 3 years, the humiliation of being excluded from the wedding, the constant emotional manipulation, the violation of my privacy, the legal threats. Mrs. Peterson, Mr. Henderson finally asked, why did you decide to stop financial support for your son and daughter-in-law? Because I finally understood that what I was getting from them was not love, I replied, my voice clear and loud. It was a commercial transaction disguised as a family relationship. My money was welcome, but I, as a person, was not. Do you regret your decision? I only regret that it took me so long to make it. Arthur's lawyer attempted to portray me as confused during his cross-examination, but I answered every question with clarity and precision. When he tried to imply that my new friendships had manipulated me, I explained that for the first time in years, I had relationships based on mutual respect, not financial interest. In his closing argument, Arthur's lawyer insisted that I was a victim of external manipulation. Mr. Henderson's rebuttal was devastating. Your Honor, what we have seen here is not the case of an incompetent old woman, but that of a woman who has finally found the strength to free herself from years of financial and emotional abuse. The plaintiffs have presented no real medical evidence of mental incompetence. What they have presented is frustration because their source of income has decided to exercise her legal and moral right to protect her own resources. Judge Sterling retired to deliberate for 2 hours that felt like 2 years. When he returned, his expression was serious but clear. After reviewing all the evidence presented, he began, "It is obvious to this court that Mrs. Renate Peterson is in full possession of her mental faculties. Professional psychiatric evaluations confirm her cognitive competence. Her financial decisions, as painful as they may be for her family, are completely rational and within her rights. Furthermore," the judge continued, "the evidence suggests that this lawsuit is motivated by financial interest rather than by genuine concern for Mrs. Peterson's well-being. The court completely denies the request for guardianship. I had won. I had not only won the lawsuit, but also my freedom, my dignity, my right to live free from the abuse of those who supposedly loved me." As we left the courthouse, I saw Arthur and Clara talking angrily with their lawyer. Clara gave me a look of pure hatred before turning away. Arthur looked at me one last time, and for a second I saw something that might have been regret, but it was already too late. That night, Eleanor hosted a celebration at my house with all our friends. We toasted to justice, to freedom, to the sisterhood of strong women who support each other. "Renate," Alfreda told me, "today you didn't just win a trial, you won back your life." She was right. For the first time in years, the future was completely mine. I could travel, I could love, I could create, I could live without fear, without guilt, without manipulation. 3 months later, I sold my house and moved to a beautiful apartment near the city center. I donated half of my money to organizations that protect the elderly from family abuse. With the other half, I began to live the life I had always wanted. I traveled through Europe, took art classes, and joined volunteer groups. I never heard from Arthur and Clara again. I heard through others that they had to move to a smaller apartment and that Clara had found a job for the first time in years. Perhaps adversity would teach them what my generosity never could, the value of honest work and independence. Some nights, when I look at the stars from my new balcony, I think about the woman I was a year ago, fearful, manipulated, believing I had to buy love. That woman is dead, and in her place, someone has been born who has understood a fundamental truth. True love never has a price, and freedom is never too expensive. My name is Renate Peterson. I am 71 years old, and I have finally learned that the most important person I have to love and protect is myself. If you liked my story, you can support me by making a donation so I can write more stories. Thank you in advance. And you, what would you do in this person's place? I would love to hear your opinion, so please share it with me in the comments. I'm always curious about what you all think, and also write me where you heard this story. For more life stories like this, like the video and subscribe to my channel. There are many other stories waiting for you.